Great to have you along for the ride. Thanks a lot for stopping by. Glad to have this young lady back. She's an incredible independent reporter, the host of her own show, The Breanna Morello Show. It's Breanna Morello. How are you, Bree? Good to see you.
Joe, I'm doing well. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. I was just on Newsmax, and they were actually doing a story that you posted about, which I thought was pretty incredible. We don't know how many people are in Syria. We can get into that if we have time.
Yeah.
But the story that you just told me about, we were texting back and forth. I don't know what this guy's doing. 1,500 people a week ago. He pardons 3 Chinese spies or something. One of the guys had almost 50,000 images and videos of child pornography on his computer. What is Joe Biden doing? Because the death sentence stuff is even beyond all that. Tell me, fill me in.
Yeah, Joe, I don't think he even knows what he's doing. I think he's just signing documents and he has no idea what's going on. Like you cited, and it's sad because no one in the mainstream media is talking about it, but Joe Biden traded a convicted child predator at this point, there's no other way to say it, who had 47,000 child pornography images on their device. Now, it gets even worse. He is now taking the death penalty off the table for the most vile human beings on the face of this earth. I'm going to spare your audience a little bit of the details because they are really horrific. But there was a 12-year-old girl who was killed, and she was killed in the most horrifying way possible, as if that's even a thing. She also had to witness the murder of her mother. Joe Biden just spared both of their murderers. It's the same guy, but just spared his life by making sure that he won't be put to death. He also spared a white supremacist, an MS-13 gang member, who was the first MS-13 gang member in our country to ever be sentenced to death after executing 2 people. Joe Biden just spared his life. And the list goes on. There was also a...
Well, I want to say, if you don't mind, I've got to stop you for a second because I want you to continue with the list. And thank you for not getting incredibly graphic. I do see, if you want to go follow Breanna Morello over on X, you'll see more details on these cases. But you said something off the top, which you're spot on. It's not him.
Yeah.
Joe Biden is not cognitively there. Yeah. So who has the ability to get in his ear? Is this Harris? Because she's always been for this, social justice reform or judicial system reform, whatever, prison system reform. We're letting really, really bad guys breathe the air, eat the food that we're paying for, and enjoy the rest of their natural lives while they killed these people in the most heinous manner. Do we have any idea who's pulling the strings here?
No idea who's pulling the strings here. And I think I think the best way to handle this, Joe, would be for somebody, an attorney, to challenge all of this. Because let's say it's your elderly parent who isn't doing well and is on a mental health decline, and you would get power of attorney to represent your parent. And that's what should be happening with Joe right now. We're seeing all these leaks come out all of a sudden now to the mainstream media that Joe, since day one, hasn't been right and hasn't been able to get himself together. So that, to me, is enough evidence for us to even question whether these things are even legitimate, given the fact that he's not even capable of understanding what he is signing. And if a court were to pull him if he go in front of a judge, I'm pretty sure a judge would look at him and say, okay, this man is not right. He's not making the right decisions. So he might be physically signing it after they drug him, nap him, whatever the case is, but he's not right in the head to understand completely what he is signing.
It is Breanna Morello. Go to BreannaMorello.com. Go check her out on her show as well. It's on X. It's on Rumble. It's all over the place. I know that you're appearing on television a lot lately, too, so you go and check out anything Breanna does. Incredible reporter. So as we're going down the list of 37, is there anything that jumps out that makes them make sense to be in a group of people that will now get their death sentences commuted to life in prison? Or is it just randomly 37 people?
It's just randomly 37 people. The only 3 people who were left off were terrorists. So individuals, the Boston bomber, he was left off the list. But everybody else was just automatically receiving this commuted sentence. And so now they're going to spend the rest of their lives in prison. I mean, literally, Joe, it's a cop killer is also on this list. And it's a cop killer whose family, after this individual was convicted, the family was given a sense of justice. And sadly, the partner went to the media and told the media that they didn't think justice would be putting this individual to death. And so the Associated Press has been running that narrative the whole day. It's on all of their stories, as if this partner speaks for the family and speaks for all of them. They haven't spoken to any other victims, though, it sounds like, that are angry at this. And I'd assume that the victims' families would be angry at this because this is coming right before Christmas. So this is not the gift that they had in mind. And these people have been waiting for almost 2 decades, some of these people, for justice to take place. And sadly, it hasn't happened for them.
Yeah, it's Breanna Morello. Go and follow her over on X, an amazing independent journalist, good friend of mine as well. As we're talking about this, it doesn't matter if the victim's family doesn't want them to die. That doesn't matter. They were adjudicated. They got the punishment. That punishment should stick, in my opinion. Having said that, you said something a little while ago that I want to expand upon if you can. if this is being done by a guy in cognitive decline who doesn't have his faculties about him, and if he's doing this, you mentioned something about, can this be challenged? Can it be? Because again, we know that in, I think it's Article 1, Section 1, something like that, of the Constitution, the president has the right to pardon, and it's very, very vast, and it's very, very all-encompassing. But if a president isn't of his own, wits, I think they'd have the 25th Amendment that got to get rid of him to stop him from doing this. Is there any legal aspect you can think of that would allow somebody to say, I'm going to have my attorney, like the victim's family says, what are you, nuts? This guy's got to go to death. Can they get an attorney to sue to stop a commutation? I don't know that he can.
Yeah, I don't know if they can or not. That would probably be the first time I've ever heard of it happening too. Now, I've been texting attorneys and I've been trying to ask them. I haven't really heard back on a definite response to all of this. But I mean, I would assume if your loved one signed something like a will or some document like that, you could challenge whether or not they were even capable of understanding what they were signing at the time. So I would like to see that be brought up. I mean, I think we need to, because we need to set the tone when we're sitting here and we're allowing like serial killers. I mean, there's an individual who killed 12 people who just had his life spared. When these are the people we're sparing, we really have to sit here and wonder what's going on in the White House right now, because this shouldn't be happening. These people should not be freed. These people should have been killed a very long time ago.
Yeah. It's Breanna Morello. Go follow her. Go check out her show anywhere she happens to be. I know it's on X every night, right? I mean, almost every night I look up there and you're on there, but it's also on Rumble, yes?
We're on Rumble, yep, as well, and X as well. It's been interesting on Twitter. A lot of feedback on Twitter these days, but Rumble's where it's at. So you guys can find us every day at 7 p.m. Eastern time.
Breanna Morello. You see it on the screen if you're watching. You can see her name there. You go to our website, BreannaMorello.com. I want to do one last thing on this, and I want you to speculate a little bit if you don't mind. You and I speculate off the air. We might as well speculate on the air a little bit. Mm-hmm. What's next? Do you think that he's gonna pardon his entire family? Will he pardon himself? It doesn't appear as though he cares. He doesn't care whatsoever what he does, because every move he's made so far, the left and the right both have complained about. So he doesn't seem to care. What do you think's in store?
Well, there was a report in the Daily Mail where they were saying that Jill Biden is really revengeful right now, and she wants to go after both Kamala and Barack Obama.
Right.
So I think they're going to get really dirty with it, whether or not they start admitting what they did during the Trump years, or what they were doing behind the scenes during the Biden years, because we all know that Joe Biden wasn't capable of doing any of the lawfare that we saw. We'll see how that plays out. It seems like there's a lot of internal feuding, and they're trying to throw a lot of people under the bus. But I do assume that Joe Biden is going to have to issue a pardon for himself.
Yeah.
Again, no one's ever done that before, so we'll see how that plays out. But he's got that pardon everyone in his family, because they were all connected to those same dealings that Hunter was connected to.
Yes.
And we just saw, too, that there was the release of a photo, which is Hunter Biden, Joe Biden being introduced to Xi Jinping, the Chinese communist leader. And so, again, this is not really surprising. It's so dirty, but it's so obvious in your face now. They know that there is a chance that they could actually go to prison. So I imagine
here's the thing.
all around.
Well, what you just said a little while ago, though, plays into this. You're right. Barack Obama and Michelle Obama, Joe Biden and Jill Biden, they all hate each other now. Mm-hmm. Kamala Harris and Doug, what's his face, Emhoff, they all hate each other now. And suddenly there's a leak that Biden was never cognitively there. Oh, that's kind of weird that just came out now. Suddenly there's a leak about, Biden and his son meeting Xi Jinping. All this stuff is coming out. Suddenly there's a rumor about Barack Obama is this, that, or the other. Doug Emhoff is beating somebody up. So, I mean, this is going to get nasty, and they've got almost a whole month of nastiness to go, because whether you like it or not, whether those who don't like him like it or not, Joe Biden still has the office. He still has the job. I think Jill's making a lot of the decisions. Yeah. And by the way, I think they both voted for Trump, I'll be honest with you. Mm-hmm. But having said all of that, this is going to be the bumpiest ride we've seen. I don't want this guy to get away scot-free. I think when he pardoned his son, he thought he got away with it. He thought he sort of de facto pardoned himself because he was involved in all of that. But that's not true. You got to pardon Jim and Karen and Ashley and Jill and himself, or else the left has turned on them already. Releasing that stuff about his cognitive abilities, they've already done it. So, I mean, any speculation whatsoever? Come on, let's do a little gossip. What's going to happen between now and the 20th of January? I think some bombshell politically is going to happen to where Biden leaves office and leaves dust in his wake to where the Democrats are going to have a hard time recouping or rebuilding.
Yeah, I think he's going to have to issue everyone with the last name Biden because obviously the evidence has mounted completely against them and
Yeah.
they're in a lot of trouble. I think, though, individuals like Liz Cheney are going to get pardoned. I didn't like the fact that House Republicans started referring her for criminal charges now because that pushes
Right.
Joe Biden to want to protect her. So she will likely receive a pardon as well. And there's a couple of other Democrats who are out there on the cable news channel saying, oh, well, I wouldn't object to a pardon because we all know I'm going to be persecuted next. Well, you're
Wow.
not going to be persecuted. It's not what you guys were doing all these years to
Nope.
President Trump and his allies. What's going to happen is you're going to be held accountable for your behavior. And that's what you fear the most. Now, I don't know if the new AG is going to actually do what we need her to do at this point. I would love for Pam Bondi to be a shark out there and going after all these people. But both the cable news channels seem to be talking very highly of her, which has me very doubtful. So I don't know what's going to happen. I just imagine that these pardons are getting even worse. He's just trying his best to throw all these pardons out there now so that it drowns out whatever controversial ones are going to come our way soon.
Makes a lot of sense. Go and check out this pinned post over on X. It's Breanna Morello, Breanna, last name Morello. Go and follow her right now. She's got a huge following. Does an incredible job as an independent journalist. I told you I was just doing Newsmax. We actually focused on one of your stories. Yeah. If you don't mind, while we have a little bit of time. Yeah. Are you telling me there's nobody who works at the Department of Defense that is in charge of counting how many military members we have in Syria? That can't be true.
Joe, it's so crazy. They originally reported there was 900 U.S. service members in Syria, and then suddenly they came back and admitted that there was 2,000, which tell me that there was going to be a report coming out soon, and they were just trying to get ahead of it, it sounds like. But what's been happening in Syria, I think every American needs to pay attention to, because obviously there's just been a change in leadership in Syria. The civil war has ended, and now Bashar has been kicked out, and he's in Russia. So I want people to understand what's going on, though. U.S. troops have been leading airstrikes in Syria. Apparently, we just killed the leader of ISIS. There was also a well-known terrorist who was just recently pulled off of the terror watch list. There was a reward out for him if we were ever captured. Well, for some reason that was pulled, and I saw that because Sarah Adams, the former CIA target agent officer, she posted about it because she's been keeping an eye on Syria as well. There's a lot of strange things going on in Syria. Whether or not our CIA was responsible for potentially doing a coup and to switch out the presidency and switch out the leadership in Syria, we don't know. I mean, it's not like it's an upgrade for Syria. It's another terrorist organization that has now taken over. But then there's also, I had Congressman Tim Burchett on. We were talking about how there are 9,000 ISIS fighters who are it was supposed to be a temporary prison in Syria that the U.S. was working with local groups to hold them in this prison. Well, they're ISIS fighters, and ISIS just the other day tried breaking them out. And so potentially we'd get 9,000 freed ISIS fighters now added to. Now, they were supposed to go back to Turkey, but Turkey doesn't want them. I don't know why we're keeping these people alive. They're ISIS fighters. You might as well put them down because there's no purpose in keeping them alive. But our government has been helping to do just that. So there's a lot going on in Syria that I think Americans need to pay attention to, because it sounds like we're working with a terrorist organization right now just because we're trying to get back at Russia and Iran for who they were backing in Syria. But ultimately, nobody wins. It's Islamic extremist terrorist organizations that are there right now, and we've helped them out, it looks like.
We decided to dress the same today. We match. It's Breanna Morello, both wearing red for the festive time of the year, talking about troops and ISIS and death penalty people. When it comes to the number of troops, I know that if you were in the room, a different question would have been asked. Had I been in the room, a different question would have been asked. The complicit media just sat there and said, oh, okay, it's not 900, it's 2,000. Does nobody want to know why we didn't account for 1,100? And the second part has to be, what are we doing there? Yeah. Why are we in Syria? Did we help with the overthrow of Assad? Did we really help this new terrorist organization? It's almost like the Arab Spring happening specifically in Syria now. Has anybody asked the question, what are we doing there?
Yeah, you don't hear that because Congress never authorized any of this. So the fact that Joe Biden is so openly bragging about leading airstrikes, about to give them humanitarian aid is what they always call it, but we all know it's just paying off terrorists.
Right.
No one's asking these hard questions. I mean, I think we need to be asking these questions completely, because right now it looks like our government, again, is sitting here funneling money to terrorist organizations. And there's no reason to even be there in the first place. There's no benefit to us being there besides the fact that we were trying to push back on Russia and Iran. again. And it's just another proxy war that we shouldn't have been involved in the first place. But here we are. And it's really disappointing to see that those folks who are in the room don't speak up. You know, they sit here and they criticize Pete Hegseth and say that he's unqualified to run the Pentagon, when in all actuality, our own Pentagon doesn't even know how many U.S. troops are sitting in Syria, which is so mind-blowing to me. The only explanation I could really have for this, though, Joe, is that these aren't U.S. service members, traditional U.S. service members who are stationed in Syria. This has to be some type of agency, maybe CIA or some operation going on right now, because it doesn't make sense why they wouldn't have that headcount available for us.
No, I couldn't agree more. It's Breanna Morello. Go and check out her show right now. It's over on X. It's over on Rumble. She does a great job. Let me hit one last thing. Yeah. I know that people trust you who have consumed what you do because you're very, very good at it. They trust me. That's why the following is growing all over the place for both of us. The media is not trustworthy. When we saw this case out of the subway in New York, you and I both knew that picture they were showing wasn't necessarily the victim. Yeah. People were pushing a narrative that this is the victim, that's her name, this is how old she was, she's a this, she's a that, she's the other, and another illegal alien did something bad. Well, we do know that the illegal alien did something bad according to police. Yeah. We do know that somebody was set on fire who just happened to be asleep in the subway. It's disgusting. But the bad reporting on this, just to be first, you have a comment on that? Because you and I do it right. We're not going to report it until we know we can.
Yeah, so I saw it at first, thought it was a little strange. It looked like there was an image, like a little icon in the corner of the image that they were using of her. So that was my big red flag. Then I also noticed that there was a couple of other issues as well with it. It just didn't sound right. So I called the NYPD myself and I asked the NYPD specifically, who's the suspect? Who is the victim involved in all of this? And they turned around and said, we don't even know who the victim is. We haven't identified the victim. And so the image that's floating around online is fake information. So what I would say is this. I think a lot of people circulated it in good faith because there was a lot of independent journalists who were circulating it. And so they thought that it was safe.
Right.
My thing is this. It took me about 45 seconds to call the NYPD's media contact line and to ask them whether or not they've ID'd the victim in all of this. And I instantly got a response back from them. So that wasn't hard to vet. I would just urge everyone, before sharing something, if it seems strange, take a second before you share it, because independent journalists, we are different from the corporate media world, which means I've worked in corporate media. I've seen it before. There's a lot of questionable characters. The government's able to manipulate the corporate media because they're able to make phone calls. They need a lot of federal funding at sometimes. PBS, obviously, NPR, all of these organizations need federal funding. So they're going to be more favorable to the government. So the government has control over them. Independent journalists, they don't have control over us. So what they might be trying to do is discredit us by putting bad information out there and seeing us run it as if it's factually correct. And so it's our obligation, regardless if it's a friend or not, you have to run it. You have to be honest with people, and you can't sit there and lie about these things. You know, it looks like that was an AI generated image.
I agree.
And so you have to really ask these questions.
It's Breanna Morello. Go and follow her everywhere, BreannaMorello.com. Also, go and check her out on Rumble. Check her out on X. I know you show up on OAN all the time. At the end of the day, more information is better than less information, but make sure that it's righteous information before you report it as fact. And you gave a good lesson today on doing that on your X. Breanna, thanks for jumping in the chair. Merry Christmas if I don't talk to you.
Merry Christmas, Joe. Thank you.
All right, you're the best. We're back after this. Stay right here.